Hi, I'm Betsey, a Lubbock Master Gardener and friend of the Lubbock Public Library. Just a month ago, we talked about transition into fall, raking leaves and planting cool season plants. But October continued warm, and we had an October surprise at the end of the month. Mother Nature determines the way that we go forward into November. Snow in October is a bit unusual for Lubbock. The October 27th snow is only the fifth time since 1911 that Lubbock's had measurable snowfall. Most of October was warm and spring-like, even setting a heat record of 92 degrees a week before the storm. The storm was an abrupt shock to both people and plants. Trees still had green leaves, and the icy moisture weighed down and even broke the branches. It was a busy time for utility line people and for arborists. I expected the green leaves might be shocked into falling off the trees, but it hasn't happened as quickly as I anticipated. Many branches are bare, and other leaves are yellowing, and there are some leaves that are still green. November here in Lubbock still has some warm days with blue skies, and we continue to garden. Continue to mow those leaves that are falling and use the shredded leaves for mulch and compost layers. Bag up the extra leaves and use them next spring and summer. In this program today, we're going to talk about change of season tasks, planting for the fall, things we can still plant, ways that we prepare now for spring gardening, and ways that slower garden activities open up the time for enjoying the season. Now we should follow Mother Nature's lead, moving a little slowly. Don't immediately pull out everything that was damaged by the frost, and ask yourself the questions that are listed here. Summer annuals probably were killed and can be pulled up. I pulled up sweet potato vine, portulaca, marigolds, petunias, and so on. Cool weather plants like chard, broccoli, pansies may have looked a little wilted, but they'll perk up and be fine. Go slower with perennials. Some of them do die back to the ground, and others, like rosemary, keep their green. Gaura is a drought-tolerant perennial that does really well here, and it dies back with the frost. Notice that this one has green growth at the base. So I'll cut the dead stalks back, but leave 4 to 5 inches above the ground. Lantana is really an experiment here in Lubbock. Some varieties, some locations, and the winter weather are all factors about whether it lives for a season or longer as a perennial. You can see this plant was green and blooming until it was shocked by the frost. The leaves have been killed, but I'll let them dry up and fall off, and then I'll cut it back, but not prune it to the ground. Some people like to cut back perennials as a fall cleanup, but I prefer to let them go to the spring for 2 reasons. First, the plants provide interesting winter sculpture in the garden, and the woody stems and seeds provide shelter and food for birds and other wildlife. You can see that the rosemary and the pansies did just fine in the cold weather. You might add some mulch or some compost, but conservatively, it helps the soil retain moisture, but it needs to be thin enough to allow moisture from storms to escape. The mulch also will block light to keep weed seeds from germinating. In the vegetable garden, clean out plants that were killed by frost. If the dead plants are free of disease and have not gone to seed, you can chop them up as you do for fallen leaves. Some gardeners spade a few inches of shredded leaves into the soil to loosen and aerate it. But other gardeners prefer not to disturb the microorganisms and the earthworms. They simply add a layer of mulch or compost on top to decompose in place. It really depends on the kind of soil you have, whether it's compact and hard and needs turning to loosen it up, or if it's looser from several years of conditioning. Whichever way you do it, a light sprinkle of fertilizer adds the nitrogen that really helps the decomposing. Plants need less water in cooler temperatures, and gardeners need to adjust the watering to the plant's needs. Water is a precious resource in our desert climate, and whether we use city water or well water, the source is the same. It all comes out of the Ogallala Aquifer. Within the city, winter watering restrictions are in effect from October 1st through May 31st. This is intended to conserve water and minimize icy roads. Watering should only happen when the temperature is above 35 degrees and when it's not raining or snowing. Days for watering are determined by your street address, and information is available on the City Water Department website. In November, we can continue to plant pansies, ornamental kale, and cabbage if you can find them, and they're great for winter color. It's also time to begin planting bulbs for spring blooming daffodils. Late fall is a good time to plant woody plants, including shrubs, trees, and woody vines. Planting now allows those plants to establish roots before next summer's heat. This drawing shows to dig the hole wider than the root ball, and use caution not to plant too deep or too shallow. You want it right at soil level. You water to settle the soil around the planting. Mulching helps to retain the moisture for a new plant. But if you do mulch, pull it away from the edge of the new plant and don't bury the root flare. If you want to move existing plants, wait until December or January when they are fully dormant. The brown plant on the left is a Tahoka daisy, gone to seed. It's native to our area and covered with lavender flowers in the spring. Now's the prime time for collecting seeds for your own use or for donation to the library's Sow and Grow Seed Exchange. There's another program in this series about the Sow and Grow Library. There's also a program about how to collect and store seeds. You'll find all of the gardening programs among the videos on the Lubbock Public Library Facebook page. November's a great time to spread wildflower seeds. On the right, the orange poppies were blooming last spring. Several years ago, I tossed seeds from a packet in November, and they reseed each year. Wildflower seeds may sprout and spend the winter as little small plants before taking off and blooming in the spring. November's a great time to create new planting beds. No digging necessary. Set your mower as low as it will go and scalp the grass. When the wind is calm, cover the area with cardboard or layers of newspaper. And in this picture, it looks like they have actually added some twigs and brush underneath the cardboard, which helps with moisture going through. But then you add to the cardboard or the newspaper layers of compost, chopped leaves, shredded paper. I usually water each layer in our dry climate and make sure the top layer is soil or compost so nothing blows away in our wind. I have a perennial flower bed that I started this way 3 years ago. It's the bed where the Tahoka daisies in the previous slide are growing. Another task for this time of year is cleaning the mud off your tools and preparing them for winter storage. Metal tools can be sharpened and then properly stored to prevent rust. Rubbing linseed oil into wooden handles prevents them from cracking. You can see demonstration videos on YouTube. You also want to remove hoses from faucets and drain the water to prevent freeze damage to the hoses. So in this program, we've talked about tasks that relate to the change of season, things we can still plant, ways that we prepare for spring. And now we want to remember that as gardening slows down, we have an opportunity to look around and enjoy the season. We live in a major western flyway for migration of many birds and insects. Our October freeze ended the monarch butterfly migration, and now other birds are showing up. Listen for the honking of the geese, and pause to watch their magnificent V-shaped flight patterns. Many ducks and geese stay here in Lubbock for the winter, feasting on seeds and bugs in harvested fields around the city, and then resting in our playa lakes. Feeders and fresh water in your own backyard will attract birds for close observation. Winter's a great time to tend house plants and gather ideas for next year's garden. There are lots of gardening websites, gardening centers, videos, and streaming programs. Just be cautious that the information comes from a reputable site, based on plant science and the experiences of desert gardening in our climate. Here's a sampling of books that are available at the public library. Check that the Texas books include information for West Texas, because it's very different gardening than it is in other parts of the state. Gardening becomes more rewarding when we work with nature, growing plants that thrive in our Lubbock conditions. Enjoy the beauty that each season brings.